What's going on, everybody? This is Ultimate Device Vids, and today in this video we're going to be talking iPhone XR in late 2020 going into 2021 and why I believe it's the best value iPhone you can get for the price in late 2020 going into 2021. So first, we're going to discuss why I recommend this phone in 2021, and then towards the end of the video we're going to discuss some of the possible downsides of this device. So starting off with some information about this phone, it was released in late 2018 and it features the A12 chip and features a basically edge-to-edge screen design with a 6.1-inch LCD, and of course we have the notch at the top of the device for Face ID unlock. This overall screen design with the curved edges and the notch for Face ID is the same design that's featured in the newer 2019 and 2020 iPhone models, so the XR is definitely a very modern feeling smartphone. The display size, once again at 6.1 inches, is a pretty satisfactory size for most users and is overall a pretty standard size for a smartphone screen in 2021. In terms of cameras, on the back of the device there's one 12 megapixel wide angle camera with f1.8 aperture and optical image stabilization, and it is capable of the famous portrait mode on the iPhone as well. Definitely don't let the fact that the XR only has one camera on the back deter you from it. While it does lack the ultra wide and telephoto lenses, for the average person this camera is plenty good. In fact, it's a fantastic camera that takes great photos and videos. Here's a few photos taken on the XR, and as you can see they look great. So for snapping photos and maybe posting them to Instagram, you're not going to have any issues with this phone. In fact, I think you're going to be quite impressed. And the same thing goes for video recording. The XR is capable of shooting 4K video at 60 frames per second, which also looks super crisp and super clean. So for the average phone user, the camera is going to be fine. In terms of the front-facing camera, it's 7 megapixel with f2.2 aperture, which is plenty good enough for FaceTime calls, Zoom calls, or using Snapchat. And in terms of battery life, the XR has a 2,942 milliamp hour battery. And in terms of what that actually translates to, I'd say in my experience the XR has solidly average battery life for a phone of its size. As long as you're a moderate normal user of your phone, you're probably not going to have an issue with battery life on the XR. The only time I would advise caution is if you're a very heavy user of your device, so spending several hours a day on very battery intensive tasks. But the reality is for most people that's not the case. Now of course battery life all depends on the age of the battery that you have in your device, as of course batteries do degrade over time. And this being said, if you're planning on buying a used iPhone XR, I'd recommend figuring out what the battery capacity of the phone is through the item listing or through contacting the seller of the device, so you don't end up with an iPhone with a heavily degraded battery. I'd personally only recommend buying an iPhone if it has at least 85% battery capacity, and this information is listed in settings, battery, and then battery health. And I also want to talk about the power and lifespan of the iPhone XR. And once again, this phone was released in late 2018 with the A12 chip, and it has 3 gigabytes of RAM. And it has proven to be quite powerful to this day, plenty of power for most tasks. Also, looking back, Apple has a great track record for giving their phones support for software updates for a very long period of time. Take the iPhone 6s for example. It was released back in 2015 with iOS 9, and it's still supported by Apple in iOS 14 today. That's 6 years of software update support. And if you look even further back with the iPhone 5s and the iPhone 6, the 5s was supported from iOS 7 to iOS 12. So once again, 6 years of support, and the 6 was supported from iOS 8 to iOS 12. So 5 years of support. So taking this into consideration, in addition to the fact that Apple's processors get more and more powerful each year, the iPhone XR is most likely going to get at least 3 more years of software update support. Now of course, the past isn't always an indication of the future, but I think it's safe to say that the XR will be supported for quite a while longer in terms of software updates. It's also worth noting that the XR is IP67 splash, water, and dust resistant, so you shouldn't have a problem with accidental exposure to water. Although keep in mind, if you do buy an iPhone XR used, definitely keep in mind that the water resistance could be tampered with due to third-party repair procedures. When you buy a device used, you never really know if the waterproof seal has been damaged, tinkered with, or removed. So that's definitely worth mentioning if you have or are planning to buy an iPhone XR used. Also, in my opinion, it's generally not worth putting claims like water resistance to the test if you can avoid doing so, just to be safe. And another factor I enjoy about the XR is the build quality. It feels very sturdy and like a quality phone. It has a nice weight to it. It's not super heavy by any means, but it doesn't feel like it's cheap. The phone weighs 6.84 ounces or 194 grams. It features a glass back with wireless charging capabilities and aluminum sides, so definitely A+ from me on build quality. And most importantly, the price. So you can generally get a good used unlocked iPhone XR for around $350 to $400, somewhere in that range, US dollars. And of course, this is as of the time that I'm recording this video, being late 2020. And as always, when buying a used iPhone, make sure it's of good quality, so read the description carefully and ask the seller questions if needed. Also, Apple does still sell the iPhone XR new for $499 US dollars. However, I do believe that the best deal for this phone is getting a used one. The cost of a used XR is usually less than or equal to the price of a brand new iPhone SE 2020, which costs $399 US dollars. And of course, the SE 2020 lacks that beautiful edge-to-edge screen that the XR has. Alright, so now let's discuss some of the possibly negative things about the XR. Now, when this phone was released, it got some bad press over a few characteristics about the display. One being the fact that it lacks an OLED panel. Once again, it's an LCD, in addition to the fact that the resolution on the screen is less than 1080p. Now, in reality, most people aren't going to have an issue with this, and also most people don't even know what that means. And honestly, the XR isn't the right phone for users who are concerned with details like this. It's just not the market for it. This being said, you could definitely make the argument that Apple should have shipped the XR with a better display, but unfortunately, that's just out of our hands. And coming from somebody who's used pretty much every single iPhone, I have no issue with the iPhone XR's display. Now, of course, when comparing the XR's LCD to an OLED display, I do notice the difference. It's not quite as sharp. Darker colors certainly look better on OLED, but honestly, it's not a big deal to me personally. And as we mentioned earlier, the XR only has one camera on the back, unlike the latest 2019 and 2020 iPhone models. So that is something that you're missing out on with the XR. But that being said, unless you absolutely need the ability to take those ultra-wide shots or that improved zoom capability, you're going to be just fine with the iPhone XR camera. The XR also features slightly larger bezels than iPhones with OLED displays like the 10, XS, 11 Pro, and 12 models. But from your perspective, if you're upgrading from an older iPhone that still has a home button, this really isn't going to apply because the full screen design is definitely an upgrade over the home button style design. And you'd only notice the difference that I'm talking about if you were coming from an OLED iPhone, but in reality, it's just a very minor difference. And also, the display size, once again at 6.1 inches, is definitely on the larger side. Possibly a little bit too big for some people's tastes. For many people, this is going to be a phone where you're not going to be able to access all areas of the display comfortably with one hand. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. So considering everything we discussed, I think the iPhone XR is a great buy if you're looking for a more affordable iPhone that has a modern design. If you guys are planning on buying an iPhone XR, let me know down below in the comments section. Also, if you already have an iPhone XR, let me know your thoughts on it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.